I guess let's get started with explaining more about what this channel is. I do plan on continuing the podcast. Just for now, it's still on hold just because I do have other things that I want to work on. I created this channel because as well I want to make more fashion related videos and just overall more of like lifestyle videos and just kind of life videos, my life journey. I'm going to record things that I feel like I want to record and I want to upload, because at the end of the day, you know, as someone that likes to create, I also have to keep in mind that social media is not the real life. Social media is a different world within our world, if that makes sense. It is a platform where you could put your creativity to use. I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be doing that because why the fuck not? Who the fuck gonna stop me? Ain't nobody gonna stop me. I guess I'll give you guys a little recap since the last video that I posted on my main YouTube account. Newsflash, I'm not 15 anymore. I'm 22. Which is fucking crazy. Because in all actuality, if I'm being quite honest with y'all, I honestly did not think that I would make it to even be 21 on some real shit. I feel like once COVID hit, I feel like for a lot of people, everything just kind of went downhill. Not only like physically, but as well as just mentally and emotionally, where, you know, a lot of the world was affected in a very negative way. My last video that I posted, actually, after I posted that video, I ended up having like a whole little mental breakdown, and I ended up, my hair was 3 inches off my scalp. It was a very hard time in my life, you know, just because I had a lot of, you know, just issues going on, like not only health wise but as well as, you know, family wise and stuff. Just overwhelmed with a lot of emotions and not knowing how to cope with them, you know, definitely led me to a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms. It wasn't until I actually started going to therapy where I realized that a lot of these coping skills were not healthy at all. After going to therapy, I feel like I learned a lot about myself and just a lot about the people around me. I feel like ever since I started going to therapy, there's a lot of things that I have learned and a lot of things that I've had to unlearn. I was in such a boxed I was in such a boxed headspace where I only knew along those 4 lines, you know, and I feel like it wasn't until I started going to therapy where my therapist would actually ask me, she's like, okay, but like, is that really what you believe, or is that what your parents have kind of instilled in you since you were a kid? And I thought about it and I was like, no, you're right. I'm like, you know, technically I don't really genuinely believe that that is true. And so I would go on these ventures in my head, and I would ask myself a lot of the things that were implemented in me as a kid, if that's what I believed or if that's what was instilled in me as a kid. And I was like damn. I was like, it's not neither wrong or right, just because everyone does have their own beliefs, but at the same time, just because my parents, yes, did raise me, doesn't necessarily mean that I have to have the same beliefs as them or as anyone else in my family. From that point on, learning more about myself and learning more about what I believed. Growing up, you know, therapy was something that was very looked down upon in my family. They did give me that mentality that, you know, therapy was for crazy people. After actually having a full-on conversation with my therapist, you know, she kind of asked me, she was like, okay, like, is that something that you believe, or is that something that you were taught to believe? And I was like, yeah, no, I don't really believe that therapy is for crazy people. I feel like, you know, and I kind of just went deeper into it in my mind, and I was like, no, I feel like therapy is a really helpful resource that we are able to have. Mind you too, if you come from a Hispanic household, or honestly just in any household where, so, you know, having one of your parents being just very misogynistic, if you speak up as a woman, if you talk back to them, if you just feel like, honestly, if you just feel to state your opinion around them, they automatically think that you're rebellious, you're misbehaving, you're a corrupt person. And I'm just over here like, nah, gang, I just got my own opinion. Real shit, I just got my own opinion. Like, I'm sorry I don't agree with you with the shit you say, the way you act. Growing up in a house like that, like, I grew up very much in fear, very much not being able to really have the courage to speak up for myself, very much shut down in a lot of ways, you know. And for those of you guys that know me, like, I've always been the self-expressive type, like, ever since I was in 4th grade. I started dyeing my hair. My parents had an issue with that, you know, and I would constantly not only get judged by them, but I would constantly get judged by certain family members. Like, being judged while you're in that headspace of not being able to defend yourself, like, you just overall not knowing your self-worth, you know, feeling like shit every day, feeling like no one understands you, feeling like you're just stuck in this loop of hopelessness, of just pure dread every single day, and then having people just pick on you on a daily. Like, bro, that shit destroys you mentally, that shit destroys you spiritually, that shit just destroys you as a person, to where then you feel like you have to pretend to be the happy person that people think you are. That's something that I actually learned about myself, was I would pretend to be this happy, overly positive person, when in reality I was fucking depressed. And I am depressed to this day, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. I feel no type of way about saying it, you know. If anything, this is more about speaking up about it and actually learning how to cope day to day with depression, with anxiety, with overall just a lot of baggage from your childhood. The way that I say this is, being overly positive, the way that it affected me in a negative way, now that I'm older, I'm 22, you know, I'm a lot older, people still expect me to be that same overly positive person that I used to be. Yes, I'm positive, and I'm very optimistic. I always tend to look at the positive. I have my days where I don't want to talk to anybody. I have my days where I'm a bitch. Like, I'm sorry, everyone's a bitch, everyone has a little bitch in them, but I'm a bitch. Sometimes I can be a bitch, you know, and I'm not always happy. But just because I'm not always happy, just because I'm not always up for having a conversation, up for, you know, putting up a happy front, it doesn't mean that I'm a bad person. And this brings me actually to my next topic. You deserve to give nobody an explanation on why you feel a certain type of way. Nobody has the right to tell you how to feel. You don't have the right to tell others how to feel. What I like to do is, when someone comes and approaches me with certain ways that they're feeling, all I do is just listen. I was never heard growing up, you know. I was never heard. I was always shut down, you know. If I ever did express any thoughts of suicide, any thoughts of just negative emotions, automatically just the basic things like, oh, you're just lazy, like, you don't want to do anything, you don't want to have a job, it has affected me in a lot of negative ways, but I feel like I've been able to overcome them a lot, you know, even if I wasn't in therapy. You know, I would sit in my room and I would just record these YouTube videos, and I'd be the happiest person on earth, because I'd be like, here I am making my YouTube videos, doing some crazy makeup look that I've never done before. I'd be in my room while there's a bunch of chaos going on outside in the living room, you know. And that was one of my ways of coping. I would be able to just get lost in the sauce. No, I'm kidding. Get lost in the sauce, in the sense of get lost in talking in whatever the fuck I was talking about. And I would post these videos and people would come up to me and be like, oh my god, like, I saw your video. You know, my cousins would tell me about how they saw my video, and you know, like, I was just getting so much love from people, and although I was getting love from all these people, it still felt like bitch, I'm not being heard. Like, I feel like I'm just putting up a front, and this isn't even myself. Like, this is not even the real me. Like, little do y'all know, like, yes, I'm recording this video, but I want to fucking pull my hairs out right now. My health, my mental health was all fucking decreasing. But I got into doing things that I shouldn't have been doing at such a young age. Eventually, I grew up into becoming the woman that I am today. Honestly, I wouldn't wish to be someone else. I wouldn't wish for others to be me. You know, I feel like everyone has their own life story. Everyone goes through what they go through, you know, and I feel like what really sparks that human connection between every single one of us is really being able to relate to each other's stories, you know, but also as well as being able to move on and continue life, you know, knowing that these terrible things happen to us, but we choose to not let them define us. I post content and I honestly do not give a fuck what people gotta say anymore. Honestly too, over time I have grown my relationship a lot with God. The way I started my relationship with God was actually through a friend that I've actually known since I was pretty young. You know, I thank God for bringing him into my life and allowing me to learn more about God himself, you know, and basically just reading into the Word of God and really putting my faith, really strengthening my faith, really allowing myself to have a new perspective on life, a new perspective on a lot of things. I wouldn't necessarily say that my relationship with God is the best. I do have my own Bible that I actually read, which has actually helped me a lot understand a lot of the scriptures. I like that because sometimes I feel like I don't understand the scriptures, but which I'm not gonna lie and be like, yeah, like I understand. No, like sometimes there's some scriptures that I have to Google where I'm like, okay, so what exactly is the scripture saying? The reason why I started the podcast was because I feel like I was going through a period in my life where I wouldn't necessarily say that it'd be like a spiritual awakening, but I feel like I was realizing a lot and just really learning how to be happy in a lot of aspects, you know, because a lot of you guys do not know, but I've been struggling with depression since I was 11. Long story short, you know, I feel like I would have this desire to just not be here anymore. And my whole purpose to starting that podcast was to make a lot of kids and adults, you know, understand that life gets better. You know, you don't have to constantly live in a reoccurring cycle. You know, there's a lot more things in life just based on a lot of things that I've gone through. I know there's people that have gone through worse. I just want to let everyone know that there's always a light at the end of the tunnel, which is so cliche to say, but it's so true. I'm so happy that I started getting more into God's word. I'm so happy that I started going to therapy. I'm so happy that I started surrounding myself with people that had a positive outlook on life. I had to cut off a lot of people, you know, just because our beliefs did not align anymore, you know. And I know a lot of people probably feel some type of way about it, but honestly, you should never feel guilty for wanting what's best for you. You should never feel guilty for wanting better for yourself, really. And although I do miss those connections, but it's more so of just showing love from afar. Everyone that I've ever met in my life has just been a beautiful human being. If you ask me now how I am, sometimes I'll tell you that I'm okay because I am okay. Sometimes I'll tell you, yeah, I'm just hanging in there is because I'm just hanging in there, literally. And sometimes I'll be honest and I'll tell you, nah, like, honestly, I'm not okay. Like, I feel like this and that. But most of the time, I also refrain myself from actually expressing that from certain people because I know that they don't need that baggage to handle or feel the need that they have to handle that baggage. That if I am willing to listen to people, I have to understand that if I'm taking care of them in some way, I have to also take care of myself, which was actually something that I learned and it was very difficult, and it still is, you know. It's still something that I struggle with, you know, self-care. Honestly, one thing I can say is going to therapy has actually been one of the best things that I've actually ever came across. And honestly, I recommend it for anyone that's willing to try. One thing I can say though is definitely find someone that you're able to relate to. Find someone who's been through similar situations as you and is willing to give their perspective on their experience. And I understand sometimes people will be having you fucked up. Trust me, people be having me fucked up too sometimes. But I feel like when you're kind to somebody that's just having a terrible day, I feel like that helps them a little bit more. It motivates them a little bit more in a sense. And if it doesn't, well, damn, at least you in your mind, in your heart, you know that you are not being a messed up human being. Makeup has been one of the healthiest coping skills that I've ever had, you know, even as a teenager. I found my lip liner. Filming this video has actually been very, very therapeutic for me, and I just want to let anyone know that's watching this video that man, I don't know how to explain it. Like, I feel like there's so much I want to say, but I guess the best way for me to say this is live life, but create your own life. Create your own vision of what you want your life to look like. Just know that you are more than capable of doing it. A lot of people tend to underestimate themselves, and I feel like you really need to look deeper within yourself and understand the value that you have. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys continue to stay tuned for the following videos. Later, gators. Bye.